ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। ॐ अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरम् तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। Shivom friends. Now today we will take reading of chapter 72 Upasna Khand Yog Vasishtha Maharamayan. And in this chapter a lecture on the nature of liberation is there. And Vasishtha continued, you are not born with the birth of your body and you are not dead with its death. You are the immaculate spirit in your soul and your body is nobody to you. Metaphors of the plum on a plate and of vacuum in a pot, which are offered to prove that the loss of the one means the loss of the other, are false reason. Neither the plum nor the vacuum is lost by breaking the plate or the pot. Whoever thinks that he will perish with his perishable body and is sorry for it is truly blinded in his mind. He is to be pitied for his mental blindness, as there is no relationship between the reins of a horse and the chariot. So there is no relationship between the organs of the body and intellect. There is no relationship between the mud and the clean water of a reservoir. So, O Raghav, there is no correlation between the body parts and the soul. As the traveler retains no love or sorrow for the path he has passed and the journey he has already made, so the soul bears no affection or dislike towards the body with which it is sojourned and which it has left behind. As imaginary ghosts and fairies strike fear and love in some persons, so the ideal world inspires pleasure and pain in the mind of the idealist. The assemblage of the five elements has framed all these different forms of beings in the world, just as various images are carved out from the same wood. You see nothing but woody substance in all timber, so you find nothing except a collection of the five elements in all tangible bodies. Therefore, O Ram, why should you rejoice or regret at anything, seeing that the five elements have their own course, joining and disjoining themselves in the formation and dissolution of bodies? Why should one be so fond of female forms or the forms of other beautiful things on earth? Men run after them like flies, falling in fire only to consume themselves. Good features and good shapes are delightful to the ignorant, but to the wise they present their real figures of combinations of the five elements and no more. Two statues cut from the same stone or two figures carved of the same wood bear no affection or relationship to one another, however close they may be placed to each other. It is the same with the body and mind. Dolls made of clay and placed together in a basket don't form any friendship by their long association with one another. So, understanding the organs of sense, the soul and mind, those so closely united in the same body, bear no relation with one another. Marble statues, though so fair and closely kept in the sculptor's house, contract no acquaintance or friendship with one another. In the same way, the organs of sense, life, the soul, and the mind, though they reside in the same body, have no alliance with one another. As things growing apart from one another come to be joined together for an instant by some accident, like reeds and rushes carried by the waves of the sea. So, all beings, such as man and their bodily senses and mind and the soul, are brought to meet together only for a time in order to be separated forever. As reeds and rushes are joined in heaps and again separated from one another by the current of the river, so the course of time joins the elements, the mind and soul in gross bodies only for their separation. The soul, in the form of the mind, unites the component parts of the body like the whirling currents of the sea, swirls, reeds, and rushes. The soul, awakened to its knowledge of itself, relinquishes its knowledge of objects and becomes purely subjective in itself. Like water by its own motion throws away its dirt and becomes as pure as crystal. The soul, released of its objective knowledge of the world, looks upon its own body like the gods look upon this speck of earth below the region of air. The soul, seeing itself quite unconcerned to the elemental particles, quite becomes disembodied as a pure spirit, then shines forth in full brightness like the blazing sun at midday. Then it comes to itself by itself, as it were without any check or bounds set to it. Then, being set free from the giddiness of the objective, it sees itself subjectively in its own consciousness. It is the soul which agitates the world, rising of its own essence, just as the agitation of water particles raises the waves all over the wide extent of the sea. Thus, this passionate and sinless man of great understanding, who have obtained their self revelation in this life, move about as freely as the wave in the great ocean of the anti comprehending soul. As the waves move freely in the sea and pour the gems and pearls which they bear over distant shores, so the best of men wander everywhere free of all desire, enriching mankind with the treasure of their knowledge. As the sea is not soiled by the floating wood it carries from the shore, and the face of the sky is not soiled by the flying dust of the earth, so men of great minds and souls are not perverted by their conduct in the world. Those who are masters of themselves are not moved to love or hatred in their behavior with others or with those who are steady or unsteady in their friendship or with those who are vicious and ignorant. Because though they know that whatever passes in the mind relating to worldly matters are all its vagaries and reveries of thought, which are only airy nothings. The knowledge of oneself and of other things belonging to the past, present, and future, and the relation of visible phenomena with the sense of vision are all workings of the mind. Phenomena depending only upon sight may be false from the deception of our vision, like an apparition in darkness. In vain we are glad or sorry at their sight or disappearance. What is unreal is always unreal, and what is real is ever the same. But what that which is real and unreal at the same or different times must be false appearance, and doesn't merit our rejoicing or sorrow at their presence or absence. Refrain from a partial view of things and employ yourself to the full knowledge of objects. Know that a learned man of vast knowledge never falls into the false conceptions of things. I have fully expounded the relation of visual phenomena and their vision, and shown the spiritual pleasure which is derivable from contemplation of the abstract relation existing between them. The abstract meditation of things is said to be a divine attribute, and our consciousness of the relations of vision and visible phenomena afford the highest delight to the soul. The consideration of the relationship between visible phenomena and vision affords the physical delight of knowing the material world to the ignorant. It gives the spiritual joy of liberation to the wise. Hence, the attachment of our mind to visible phenomena is called its bondage. Its detachment from them is said to be its freedom. The former is pleasant to the sensuous body, and the later is delightful to the conscious soul. The mind, understanding the relationships among things before it, and freed from thoughts of its loss or gain in this world, is said to enjoy its freedom. Abstaining from the sight of visible phenomena constitutes the trance vision of the soul, which is enlarged and illuminated by its inner vision within itself. Release from the bondage of phenomena and restraining the mind to its inner workings constitute fourth stage of perfection, which is called turiya, and which is also called its liberation. Knowledge is in the conscious soul of the relationship of phenomena doesn't make it stout or lean, or more manifest or obscure in its nature. The soul is not intelligent or inert, not a being or a not being. It is not the ego or non-ego, not a unit or many in one. It is not near or far away from us, nor it is an entity or non-entity either. It is not within or beyond our reach. It is in all, yet not all, and nothing at all. It is none of the categories or no category. It is not the fivefold elements or composed of any of them. It is not the well-known mind which is reckoned as the sixth organ of sense. That which is beyond all things is nothing at all of this world, but it is something known and seen in the hearts of the wise. All the world is full of the soul, and there is nothing beyond it. It is in all that is solid or soft or liquid, and in all motions that proceed from it. The soul is all in all things, composed of the five elements of earth, water, air, fire, and ether. There is nothing around that has its existence without the essence of the soul. This single soul is diffused in all the worlds and throughout all space and time. There is no fragment of anything without the soul. Therefore, if you will have a great soul in you, keep your mind fixed in the universal soul. And in the next 73rd chapter, visualizations of the soul, its experience, and more manifest in living beings, knowledge and not liberation. Vashiji continued, by reasoning in this manner and by renouncing the knowledge of duality, the yogi comes to know the nature of his soul, just as the gods know the divine nature, which is the gem of their meditation. Now, hear about this unsurpassed sight, which is the soul or in being of all visible beings. By this attitude, you will have the keen, clear vision of the gods and get sight of God. Think of yourself as the light of sun and the endless sky with all its 10 sides and the upper and lower regions of space, and that your soul is the soul of gods and demigods and the light of all luminous bodies. Know yourself as darkness, the clouds, the earth and seas, the air and fire and dust of the earth, and that is entire world is combined in you. Know that you are everywhere in all the three worlds together with the soul abiding in them, and that you are nothing other than the unity in itself. There is no duality of anybody, only the unity which pervades the whole. Being certain of this truth, you will see innumerable worlds situated in your internal soul. By adopting this attitude, you will escape from being subjected to or overcome by the joys and sorrows of life. Tell me, O lotus-eyed Ram, how can you call one as connected or separate from you when you know that the entire creation, including yourself, is contained in the all-containing universal soul? Tell me, do the wise live outside that being, that they should give way to joy or grief, which are the two phases of the universal soul? There are two kinds of individual egos growing out of the knowledge of truth. Both of these are good and pure in their natures and produce spirituality and liberation of man. One ego is the form of a minute particle, transcending all things in its minuteness. The other is the ego of oneself. The first is that the one ego is all. I am extremely subtle and transcendental self. The second is the knowledge that my or your ego is the same one. I am all and everything. There is a third sort of ego, amounting to the non ego, which takes the body for the ego and thus becomes subject to misery and finds no rest in this life or in the next. Now, leaving all these three kinds of subjective, objective, and non egos, he who holds fast to the fourth sort of the non ego sees the soul intellect beyond these three. This essence, being above all and beyond the reach of all, existence is the manifesting soul of the unreal world. Look into your notion of it, and you shall find yourself assimilated with it. Then get rid of all your desires and ties of your heart and becomes full of the divine knowledge. The soul is not known by any logical inference or from the light, the revelations of the Vedas. It is always best and most fully known to be present with us by our direct experience of it. All the sensations and vibrations that we have in our bodies and all the thoughts of which we are conscious in our minds are all attribute of the sovereign soul, which is beyond our vision and visible phenomena. This Lord is no real substance nor an unreal non-entity. He is not a minutiae or a vast massiveness either. He is not in the midst of these dimensions, nor is he this or that, but is always as he is. It is improper to describe him as such and such, or that he is otherwise, than this or that. Know him, therefore, as the inexpressible and indefinable one. To say that this is the soul and that is not the soul are only verbal differences of something that words cannot express or differentiate. The soul is an attribute of the omnipresent power. It is present in all places and comprehends the three times of the past, present, and future in itself. Yet, it is invisible and incomprehensible to us, owing to its extreme rarity and immensity. The soul resides in the infinity of substances. It reflects itself as the living soul in animated bodies, just as sunlight reflects its rays through a glass prism. Owing to the animating power of the soul, we have some experience of the soul. Although the soul pervades all things, it is the most manifest in living bodies, as the air which surrounds all bodies everywhere circulates only in the open ethereal space. Intellectual soul is all pervading and everywhere and never stationary in any place. The Spirit of the Lord has the same boundaries as the vast range of His creation. But the animating soul of living beings doesn't breathe in minerals, nor but only in animals. Just as the light enlightens the eye and the dust flies with the winds. When the animating principle resides in the soul, it bursts forth with all its desires, just as people pursue their callings by the sun has risen above the horizon. But just as the sun is unaffected if people should cease their activity when he is shining above their heads, so it is nothing to consciousness whether man be without their desires and actions while it resides in the soul. If soul exists by the inheritance of Lord in it, it suffers no loss by the absence of the frail body. The soul is not born, nor does it die. It doesn't receive or desire anything. It is not restrained or liberated, but it is the soul of all at all times. The soul is awakened by its enlightenment, or else the soul is supposed to be what is no soul, only for our misery. Just as the snake is supposed to be in a rope only for our error and fear. The soul being without its beginning, it is never born. Being unborn, it is never destroyed. It seeks nothing except itself for the lack of anything beside. The soul is unbounded by time or space. It is never confined in any place. Being always unconfined, it requires no liberation. Such, O Ram, are the qualities of the souls of all persons. Yet the ignorant deplore its loss from their want of reason. Look thoroughly, O Ram, into the course of all things in the world, and don't lament for anything like senseless men. Abandon thoughts of both your imaginary confinement and liberation. Behave like wise men, like a dumb, self-moving machine. Liberation is not something confined in this earth or in heaven above, or the seven lower regions, Patal, but resides in the hearts of the wise, their pure souls and enlightened understandings. The minute subtlety of the mind, by extinguishing its gross desires, is said to be its liberation by those who know the truth and look into the workings of their soul. As long as the pure light of consciousness doesn't shine forth in the sphere of the mind, It longs for liberation as its chief good. Liberation or freedom from all feelings is less meritorious than the knowledge of all things. The sage gives preference to knowledge above liberation. After the mind has the fullness of its intellectual powers and consciousness has been fully enlightened, it won't care for all the tenfold blessings of liberation, much less desire its salvation. O Ram, stop thinking about the distinctions of the bondage and liberation of the soul. Believe its essence to be exempted from both. Be free of your thoughts of duality and remain steadfast in your duty of ruling the earth to its utmost limits of the sea dug by the sons of Sagar. With this chapter also comes to an end, and we will rest our today's reading session here itself. We'll again meet tomorrow for the reading of next chapters. Until then, Shivo Ham, friends.